Hi, San Antonio CPG. My name is Alexis Souza, and I'm the owner of Souza Fun Marketing. I've been a graphic designer for almost 20 years, and I've specialized in print publishing and packaging for most of it. I was born and raised in San Antonio, and I often laughed at the fact that I ended up in graphic design and marketing realm, considering I had set to become a lawyer or a therapist like my parents, in a frenzy to run from classic academia and head to art school. Who knew that graphic design was truly going to be a mix of law, psychology, and art? The combo is truly what I want to impress upon a beginner walking into the CPG packaging design world. During initial COVID lockdowns, many of my clients were shut down abruptly, and we had to scramble to find a way to put their products on the market, which is when I took on a lot more packaging work and started realizing there was much more than just designing a pretty label and getting it out into the market. The distribution process was changing as fast as the industry was, and while my clients were scrambling to find ingredients and sources, I found that a lot of that I was doing at the same time for printers and papers and locations. A lot of that has stayed the same and actually has increased for the better now. As we've all worked our way through the kinks, there have been some great advancements in regards to technology and some of the manufacturing abilities that have allowed smaller CPG startups to not only package better and more efficiently, but to be able to expand into a bigger market. I can say the price of printing anything on paper has nearly doubled in the past couple of years due to supply and demand. However, some printers have specialized on demand, and so you don't have to print as much as you used to, and there's some give and take in there. With the advancing technology and the culture, we've figured out how to order online a lot more, and so that makes a CPG brand, especially a startup, something exciting because post-COVID, people were able to really figure out how to order things more often. So first things first, right? You got to eat your vegetables before dessert. So what I tend to look for in a new CPG company coming in is to be sure that they have set all their business up before they start the design. Yes, there is the fun part, but in it, the design you can get lost in. If you didn't see the first session where they were talking about having your trademarks in place, other legalities, I would highly recommend that you go back. Nothing attracts attention faster than a good-looking product that's selling, especially if someone thinks they can make a claim on it. So be sure that you have that solid foundation before you get to the fun stuff. Now, to the fun part. I like to mention to clients that their product is like a fashion statement all its own. It should reflect you. It's your baby. It's your outfit. But it also needs to attract the audience that's going to buy it. We'll call this the fashion show. Now, how much time have you spent in the aisles just studying the other products in your market? I mentioned in your market because what is on the shelf at H-E-B or Kroger is desperately different than what's on the gas station shelves, Sprouts, or a private retailer. What you wear to one event, you're not going to wear to another, What would turn eyes? The average consumer will give you less than 5 seconds of time to scan the shelves. I personally think that's a little liberal on that. They're either looking for what they recognize or looking for something new. Both work to your advantage and disadvantage. When you're thinking of how to label your product, put yourself in the shoes as they look at the aisles. What about your outfit will attract the eye? Does it look like others? Graphic designers have an ongoing joke where we talk about how clients come to us wanting us to copy the look of a competitor, often a large current competitor that has flooded the market with their look. We all have had it happen. What they are saying is that they want it to fit in and grab the eye of the person looking for that product. The other angle to take, so that you want it to look different, so that people make a double take when they walk past the aisle. This is where that psychology aspect comes into play. If you have a customer base that likes the different look of something, then this works for you. If you have a client that's going to be looking for what they expect, then you might want to lean towards something that they recognize. Note which ones stand out to you and maybe note why. And you'll see why it is that you'll find me stalking product lines a lot, just standing in the store. Now that you have some new ideas and probably some snacks from spending too much time stalking consumers at the store, I want to show you some of my favorite inspiration spots online. Yes, we've all heard of Pinterest, but that's not it. If you haven't found dieline.com yet, then get ready. It's a goldmine for packaging inspiration and ongoing trends. Now, keep in mind that the budget for many of these packaging projects are huge, but it's just like watching a fashion show. You can take what sort of the trickle down is. Sometimes you can actually find some cost savings by realizing you don't have to cover an entire jar with a label, and that it's pretty cool just to have just a strip across the lid. Or maybe the way to put the ingredients on there speaks to you in a different route that you didn't expect. It's really just good to roam around and look so your eye can learn to see what's in fashion and what looks good on a successful product line. Your product look translates your brand's mission and vision, and done right gives you your brand a competitive edge. Let me see if I can find the example of the almonds and show you. So I really loved this story on Oatly. This is actually the brand, the first oat milk brand. The man who founded it was the one who actually he was the first one to, as it says, discover a way to make fiber of oats into a liquid. So really, they were more of a food tech company at first. Design-wise, he does admit that his original designs on this was pretty terrible. And so he said the first thing he did was hire one of the creative directors to turn the brand around. They had actually never done package design before, and they were afraid it might look terrible. They actually took it to a printing company, and the printing company initially turned them down. But they talked him into printing it on, I believe it was, where is it on here? Toilet paper rolls. And so they actually found that it looked good. And so it went forward, and now it's a recognizable brand that you can see all over the place. They started as a small group out of Sweden, and now they've gone global. But yeah, I encourage you to go back and read this in detail because it is actually a really cute story and well done. It'll make you feel better about the process that you go through just trying to figure out how to do the packaging design. Let's talk design programs. I'm not going to show a lot of detailed design here, but there are tons of websites for that. Frankly, every designer has a different method. As much as it makes an old school designer like me cringe, Canva can do a decent job with the right operator, though I would highly recommend working with a design program since printers typically need a high resolution PDF, and it'll be more costly to have you get the design rebuilt in the long run. Adobe Creative Suite is industry standard, costs about $60 a month. You have major access to anything an agency would use. They have training options all over the site and a lot of assets like typefaces and images that you might be able to use that are included with your membership. It's really considered an industry standard for a reason. If you're looking at saving money on your packaging, I highly recommend sticking to templates that your printer offers. And often these templates are built to work best in Adobe products like Illustrator and Photoshop. Again, a printer will often want an Adobe PDF back so the machines can understand what you've designed. You don't want to make the mistake of not having your UPC code readable because it was on a too low resolution. Creating your packaging in a program like Adobe Illustrator that produces tight vector-based images and ensures this doesn't happen. Some of the best pricing is going to be found at printers that have probably already done stuff similar for other customers like you. They've already got the stock in. They likely have a size that is already set for the product or something close, and you can avoid die cut fees. These are the metal pieces that they use to cut out the size of your label. So if you can get a hold of this template size first, you're looking at saving money and a lot of time having to redesign. When you open your file, the first thing you want to do is change it from RGB to CMYK. Typically the settings are set to RGB for web design and for your monitor, but they're vivid and pretty on the screen now, but the ink on your product doesn't have the benefit of a backlit monitor and it ends up looking muted and muddy. There's a whole art form to calibrating your screen and using Pantone, which I'm sure you can Google. But to save yourself a shock, and again, time in rebuilding, change your mode to CMYK before you start. So one of the first things I recommend is that you look at your packaging area, whether it's your box, your label, as real estate. You only have so much of it, and you can't possibly build the big house and the big garden in the pool that you had planned. So what I tend to do is put the ugly stuff down first so that I know what area I can make pretty. For instance, do you have your UPC ready? Because it's going to take up a set amount of space. A good scanner can read a barcode that fits on an ordinary person's fingernail if the printing process is sharp enough. More worrisome is that a UPC code is too big and it takes up too much scope of the scanner and you have to move it too far away, then you have another problem. The standard size for barcode is right around 1.5 inches wide by 1 inch tall. It can be shrunk down to about 80% of its size, but you're risking some scannability. So the scanner isn't actually reading the black bars, but rather the light reflected off of the white space between the bars. So the black bars have to be no less than 1/100th of an inch, which means if you ever want to be safe, never go below 1 inch by about 3/4 inches tall. Keep in mind I'm talking about American UPC codes here. It gets even weirder overseas. Where your UPC code is located on your packages needs to be taken into account also. The flatter the surface, the better. We've all done self-checkout. We know what happens there. If you see color combos that I'm showing on the screen here, avoid those. Again, it's reading colors, and you get too fancy there, you're just going to end up with a problem. The ingredient list and allergens are next on the legal real estate. There are many rules set up for the particulars of any product on what must be listed on the label, and that is an additional real estate that you have to account for on your packaging. If you didn't catch the first lesson with CPG 101 on really studying up on what the USDA and FDA recommend, I recommend that you definitely keep up with that. FDA regulates nutritional facts on all processed foods, sets the standard. I recommend keeping up with the standards like almost weekly. They tend to change solidly from year to year. It can be super costly to reprint on your packaging. Missing something on your packaging can cause a recall of the entire line and can shut down and ruin a reputation. If you're not super clear on what needs to go on your product, I would check with federal and state. I simply just wouldn't put anything on a label because I've seen disaster zones and lawsuits that have absolutely destroyed a otherwise great business. Don't make the mistake of guessing because you're risking your business. And even worse, you're missing an allergen guideline that could even cause severe death or illness. Again, new standards are updated. It is up to you, the business owner, to be sure that these are all on your label. The FDA website is always updating itself and holding public forums and possible upcoming changes. Don't forget the state regulations either. I'm keeping an eye on the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax Trade Bureau because they've now proposed rules that require possible mandatory ingredient labeling on all alcoholic products. Currently, they don't have to list but maybe a few things. That will be a massive overhaul on most designs. So I know that I have to be preparing to revise far in advance depending on how many labels product is going out, and that'll end up saving my customers money on printing in the future. Let me see here. I've got a sample here of, this is the Flash Brew done by Pure Nitro, and on here we've got a UPC. Hopefully that's coming in clear. And then he just changed it from a 12-ounce can like this down to, I don't know what size can is this. I think this screen's making me blind. An 8-ounce can. But you will notice that instead of just taking the label and shrinking it down, we needed to flip the UPC codes. The real estate area is smaller, but we tried to situate it so that it works. Often you'll see that the ingredient labels look alike, and that is by design. Helvetica typeface has been an industry benchmark for this area since that's what the FDA showcases on their sample labels. And while you can play with this to make it more unconventional, you need to be careful the font doesn't go too small. Servings per container, serving size amount shouldn't be below 10 point according to their guidelines, although 10 point is smaller in some fonts than others. The minimum size for everything else is around 6 point and legible. The ingredient list should have a font that's at least a 16th inch tall based on the lowercase letter of an O. Their words, not mine. I'll have a checklist for this in the section list of notes I'll send after the lesson. But yeah, real estate is a premium even on a label. So for practical purposes in this lesson, though, we're going to go with the average size and place it on this template that I'm sort of flashing in and out of here. And at its minimum, it's the 10.6 point rule. With a logo, product, description, ingredient list, and UPC, you can now see why the real estate is starting to look crowded. And we haven't even added information maybe we want on there, all the jazzy fun stuff or any other designs you might want. So this is where you get creative. One thing I would like to keep in mind, especially on the label, is how it's going to wrap on the product. Can you see what it looks like once it's on the shelf? So for instance, designing on a flat surface, and this is almost transparent. Well, you can do this digitally, and what you're not seeing is how this is going to wrap on the actual product. So it does help that, I printed out so many things just sitting around or folded up napkins on tables, just so I could see how something will translate once it's on a shelf. What does it look like? If it's crowded or confusing, it can be flat on a screen and be boring and be confusing on the label and vice versa. So it definitely helps to sort of, get out the old paper and scissors and mock it up. You got to consider the consumer will only be seeing one panel at a time. So when you rotate it on a shelf, or when the person who's stocking it on a shelf rotates it, does that still catch the consumer? Does it still get your brand and your look across? Let me actually show you. Where did I put it? Oh, I love these. So because I do this stuff too much, I actually pick up things just based on the packaging. And the way these guys optimize the amount of space they had is brilliant. And they maintained a packaging. So get this, it's a shampoo, right? So when you open it, they have utilized every layer of this thing. Now the shampoo is in my shower, but the shampoo was there. So when you open it, see how this looks flat? As opposed to what it looks like, here's conditioner version. It's clean, but it still gets a lot of information across. So don't be afraid to think outside the box. Do verify with your printer before you send over a file like that they can print on all the spaces that you have designed, because sometimes that is a whole other process that they either can't do or is going to price you out. But the options are always there. It's just sort of what you creatively come up with. So now that you have your real estate in place, be sure to be keeping to the rules of the templates. Some of these templates have a safe area where your design will print even if it shifts around on the printer. And often there's a bleed area where you need to extend your design over the edges so it gets cut off and looks seamless. Design at will after that. Frankly, if your computer's crashed, then kudos for surviving the initiation into the designing process. When you are ready to export to a printer, they often require a PDF, which tends to keep a vector image sharp and a bitmap image sharp. One important thing, no matter what software you use, is to embed the images that you may have used and outline the font. If you don't, you risk that your images look bitmapped and you risk your font magically replacing itself. Most printers know to check for these things and they'll alert you, but it's better safe than sorry. Always request a digital proof to check to make sure everything's translated over on their end. Sorry, I was going to get an example of that, but I'm not sure where I put it. So if possible, always get a physical proof, since colors can fluctuate on a press. The ink sinks into different materials in different ways, creates different effects. Some you might not want to do. Actually, here's this sample. Exact same color, 2 different materials. Years ago, when I was just starting out, I had a salt scrub client that insisted on having a craft label on a metal can, and I am forever indebted to the printer that recognized the cottonseed oil and the would leave product mark on that can, and the salt would turn it to rust. And he actually was able to sort of guide me and the client into having a product that didn't destroy itself. So tune in to the next CPG 101 class, where they are bringing printers in. Graphic designers and printers work closely with each other. And so if you're doing your own designing, it's best to have a good relationship ongoing with your printer in the same way you would have a relationship with any person supplying your ingredients. They can make every difference in the outcome, whether it's pricing or material or even the matching of the two. There are so many other things I could barely touch on in the time allotted, but I hope this gives you a good overall start to your packaging design and maybe some cost savings. There's some really amazing innovations and creative endeavors going on in the marketplace right now, and so I encourage you to take a stroll in the stores, check out how they balance their fashion, legal, real estate, and psychology, and I look forward to seeing your spin on it, San Antonio. Thanks for giving me time.